Hello and welcome to ZED Talks. I am with an exciting guest I recently met. You'll never guess where I met her. You've got it on LinkedIn. This is Bridget Gooner to my left or right, depends where you're on the screen. And Bridget's going to tell you all about Bridget. We've got quite a personal topic that we're going to talk about today. And I think it's going to resonate for a lot of people in, I'd say, my age bracket. Okay. So, but obviously, we don't discriminate here. We want everybody to love our content. But anyway, welcome, Bridget. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited.
Thanks, Zoe. No, I'm. Thank you for allowing me to come on this podcast and talk with you. And I'm really excited to see where it goes to.
Oh, I am too. I am super duper too. So let's do a little introduction in you. So I know that you've come from an in-house role because this is going to be so relative to what we're talking about. And now you've made that transition over to doing more fractional HR. So tell us a little bit about that journey. Give us an intro on what you love to do and where you've landed today.
Yeah, so I have been in HR all my career, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't change that because I absolutely love HR. And obviously, over the years, it has transformed from people, from personnel departments. Yeah, I'm that age bracket, to HR departments, to people departments, culture, and I absolutely loved it. I've worked in loads of different sectors. My sort of most recent roles have been, chief people officer at various large global organisations, and I'm also a qualified coach. So I have done lots of coaching in recent years, and did my masters at Henley Business School. And sort of what I'm doing now is, I was saying to somebody the other day that I've got a circle in my mind, and I'm filling it with widgets or sections or slices of cheese, whatever you want to visualize. And I've got a lot of that filled in already from being in-house and working at a very senior level and for multinational organizations, to now I'm at that point in my career, and I have probably been on that journey for the last 2 or 3 years, where I want to do what's right for me, choose what I can do, what I enjoy doing, and doing it the way I want to do it, and working with people who I want to work with. So right now I'm doing some interim work for a client in the insurance business, but I'm also doing coaching, and I'm also doing team facilitation. So I've really got a lot of variety going on, which is what I love. So that's just a high level snapshot into what I'm doing right now.
I love that. I love that. Now, this is quite a personal question. What made you want to go into the fractional? So I say you went to the other side. I
Did.
love the other side. I would never want to go, but I say never. Is that really true for me? I don't think I'd want to ever go back into
Yeah.
in-house, and I've got specific reasons for that. But what was your main thing? Like, what's the heartfelt thing that you think I don't want to go back to
Yeah.
in-house? Never say
I
never.
think, yeah, I think there was a real moment for me in my personal life, about 3 years ago. I sadly lost my mum on Christmas Eve. So that was a real moment where I just thought, okay, I've worked for 30 odd years, a bit more. I've given everything to corporate life. I've done the living out of a suitcase, flying around the world, and it's not glamorous, as we know. I've sacrificed personal things. And I think it was that moment which made me stop and evaluate. I think it's about the mortality. You think, okay, well, I'm in my 50s, and what now? And actually, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to, my identity is who I am as a person. I don't define myself by what I've done in my career. And I think, sharing these things now, if you'd asked me would I've said this sort of 20, 30 years ago, probably not. But that's what life experience is about. Hey, we sort of stop and reflect if we give ourselves that time and think about, well, who am I? What am I? What do I want? So I think sort of that coming out of corporate life was a transition that I probably didn't plan for. I'm a real planner actually by preference, and I'm a organizer. I mean, I get sort of sort of jibes in good fun from my family and friends, Christmas is just gone and Bridget's already planning for the next Christmas and those sorts of events. So I'm a real planner and doer. And I think sort of, one thing that I really realize now is that you've got to make sure you look after your own self as well. And that may seem simple, but when you've come from being in a very busy corporate world, you don't sort of make that time to think about what is the next part of your career going to be? What do you want it to be? Dare to dream about what that is and dare to invest in yourself. So I think from, as I said, losing my mum, it made me think about my own mortality, which sounds a bit gloomy, but actually, you know what? That's the only thing for certain. Yeah, we're all going to go one day. We just don't know when. But taking the time to think about, I've done that. So be brave. What else do you really want to do? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not, but it could have been easier if sort of, maybe some things I had done differently, around maybe doing more networking much more early on in my career, having a clearer plan and being brave to do that and not being defined by the machine, or that's the way it does, that's the way we have to work. And as we know, work has changed so much over the years, and I really embrace that. And, I kind of do shout outs to, to younger people who want different things out of their career. And I'm like, yeah, I'll, back you, go get it, do it differently. You don't have to do it the way it's always been done. And I think sort of, there's some great sort of authors out there. I love the thinking of the squiggly career and, how we can do things differently. So moving into, out of corporate and into doing my own stuff, I think has been really liberating as well as frightening, but it's been challenging as well. And I think what it has shown me is that I am so resourceful, more than I ever thought, I thought I was, and having tenacity and resilience and all the things that you do in corporate life. Those skills and experience will never go away. They're yours. They're in your toolbox. But it's what do you then do with that?
Totally. So much resonates with me. And I want to make a couple of bookmarks here, which is when we get into discussion around networking, and portfolio careers, like that will come at a certain moment, because that's becoming very trendy. We might have called it diversification before, but now we call it portfolio careers, apparently.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that is a lovely segue into what we're going to talk about today. So knowing the journey we've been on, and I think there's lots of people at different crossroads in life. And when we lose people, or something happens to us, and for anybody that's had loss, there is no linear path to grief and healing. But what I can confidently say is everybody has that moment where they kind of go, what do I want next? What is this has impacted my life. I only get one life. I'm going to go one day. And it's not a morbid discussion for me. It's reality. Like, how do I want to spend my time? Who do I want to spend my time with? What do I want to do? And I suppose the gift of reflection, the gift of retrospective viewpoints is so... I never imagined at 20 about being 50. It was never a thought. My mum was 50. My mum was 40. I suppose different phases of life, because we're going to get into that. Like, if I could go back to my 20-year-old self, what would I say? My 30-year-old self, my 40-year-old self, and what am I now telling my 50-year-old self? And what would I want for my 60-year-old self? I think these are real life. I now realise that I can design my life the way I want to. It's all within my control. Now, some people will disagree with me, but as a coach myself, I believe the mind is a phenomenal tool and muscle that needs to be trained. And if you teach it well enough over time, you can cultivate a mind which is abundant and growth, and it's not fixed or permanent, So I believe that we can create our environment with our thoughts and feelings and our actions. And I do subscribe to that. But did I know that back when I was 20? No. So let's go back to our 20s when we're starting out, right?
Yeah.
And let's go back, pick a time in your 20s that you go back to and say, let's have a conversation with Bridget at this age and Zoe at this age. What age would you pick?
Gosh. I'd probably go back to, when I started my first corporate role, and I'd be 22, I think I was. Yeah, about 22. And I think what I would say to myself then when I look back at what I did then was work-life balance, which back then we never even talked about, heard about. And I remember, I worked for, I think it's all right if I say who I worked for, isn't it? Back then.
Yeah, yeah, you say
Yeah.
whatever you
So I worked for, it's my first job. And actually, I'm really glad that I worked there because it taught me a lot, actually. So I worked for the Dixon Stores Group. I worked for a company called PC World. Dixon's had just acquired them.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they had 4 stores, and then they were on an aggressive, expansion program. So it was brilliant to work in that sort of environment. And there was also some things not brilliant to work in that environment, but they were learning points. But I think what I look back then, and I used to be probably the last person in the office every day. Yeah, when I worked in the then personnel department, which was a team of 3 people, and I just think, God, why did I do that? Why was I, you know, working so hard at such a young age? And that actually, on the one hand, as most things can be, they can be positives, but also blind spots. But the positive was obviously I was learning and I was growing in my early stage of my career. But the blind spots then is I gave so much of my valuable young 20s time dedicated to work and working, and I'm talking, would also be there, the CEO would be gone and I'd still be there. And I also, the biggest thing I'd say to myself is, you don't have these things now, do we? But you don't have to clear your in tray. I wouldn't go home until my in tray was clear. And your in tray, I never learned that your in tray is never going to be clear. Yeah. Well, nowadays your
Exactly.
inbox.
Never.
So, God, yeah, that's bringing me right back. I feel right there sitting at the desk.
Yes, the nostalgia of it. And at
Yeah.
20, so let's where I was working on cruise ships at 22. So
Oh,
I
well.
was always really brave. I've always been very courageous and brave. I do what people think. They want to do things and they think about it, and I'm the doer that says, I've done it. And sometimes people can think that as a braggy thing, like oh my God, you can't have done all of this. I've done it because I didn't talk about it. I didn't sit down and marinate in my own dreams. I had a dream. And I remember at 20 years old, 19, even 20, around that age, I was standing in a pub. It was called The Falcon in a little place called St. Ayres. And I was doing my leaving do. I was having leaving drinks, all my friends there, because I'm going to LA. I'm going to work on the cruise ships. And I remember it was my 20-year-old list. And I said, for the next 10 years, I will become a psychologist, I'll be a chief people officer, or I will be somebody significant in a significant role. I will own a property in Miami. I had this list, this exhaustive list, and did one at 20, 30, and at 40. And I'll tell you why I haven't done one at 50 when we come to the 50s. And so I was so hell bent. My mum always said to me that she had a child that she had to push forward in life and a child that she had to rein back. That was me, like, because I'm eager, I'm going. I don't learn by books, or at that time I didn't learn by books or TV. I learned because I was hungry to get out into the world and understand that there was more to this. I knew
Yeah.
intrinsically as a youngster, old soul, young shoulders, they say, old head, young shoulders. I was always desperate to be out, like, show me
Yeah.
everything you can. How good can life be if I go and explore? So for me, it was that time in my life that everything was just become so normalized. Living in LA, being in New York, being in Miami, being in South America, like that become my norm. And therefore, I think when I look back, how could that not impact the rest of my life?
Mm.
How could it not? So I didn't have the trajectory that you've had into, but what would I tell myself back then is forget the list. Forget the list. Be in the moment. Enjoy. Don't be worried about climbing. You've got all the time in the world. Don't worry about that. Go and enjoy, live, and be kind. Be kind, because you've got to live with an awful lot of people in a very close proximity, and you're going to have to tolerate people. So patience was probably the thing that I needed to have. I was a bit of a Rottweiler, with a bit opinionated, bit judgmental, didn't know any different. And in fact, thought I knew everything. If I could go back to my 20-year-old self and say, pipe down, you don't know everything, be in the present moment and take all the learning you can get. You know? Yeah. So the 20, those lists. So at 22, then if we kind of go a little bit more towards 30s, so we'll still stay in the 20s later, because that's a big, I think there's a big jump between 22 and 28. I think you're like you've morphed into a different, you've really come into adulthood at this point. Well, I had at 28, still thought I knew everything. Where were you then? What happened approaching your 30s? What had changed? Yeah. Ah, yeah. Yes. Mm. Mm. Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think that I concur with that. I knew that I was a ball breaker. I was in a very masculine environment by then, and I was fierce. I was always been fast, very fast, and it pissed people off. I mean, it really did. And my male counterparts would, I was as ballsy, if not more than them, and so masculine and driving, like constant heart. It was so, I look back now and think, no wonder I wasn't very liked. I mean, I was admired and respected because I got stuff done. Yes, I did. But I didn't do it in a way which was collaborative. I didn't do it. My model of the world is be like them because they've got successful. I see that they're rewarded for this behavior. I see that they're doing stuff. So that's when I got serious about I did my first degree at 35. I went to university, got my CIPD. I was already a director at that sort of I was always already a director. Not that titles matter, but it did matter to me then. It mattered to me then. Back then, at 30, I was already kind of very senior in my role. I was always extremely ambitious, which made me drive harder, faster. Um, And it didn't make me popular, but it did get me promoted because people, whilst I wasn't that warm and fluffy collaborative, I sure as hell was the hand grenade that I walked in. I mean, people might have a reaction to me saying this, but I did blow shit up and then put it back together better. And that's what I become known for, transformation. That's how I think that was a really moment in my career that made people know, if you knew me, you knew what I did. And it was very transformational work. Am I proud of that? I don't think I am. I'm not proud of like how I was in how I treated people. Um, and it creates a little bit of emotion in me. So I know that that's true. Like I know I wasn't a particularly nice. I mean, I've always been a fun-loving person and outside of work, but I think I drove people to the edge and um, yay me, but no, yay everyone else. And that's a bit dangerous being in a leadership role where you're constantly driving, and that ambition could bite people in a very unkind way. That's why I say be kind, because I don't think I was. Yeah, I don't think I was. I thought, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway. I wasn't like that towards the end of my 30s, but I distinctively, this period of time, I'd had a lot of surgery done. I'd lost a lot of weight. I'd had a lot of surgery done to remove skin removal, and I felt amazing. And I think that inflated sense of self and ego really, really tripped me up because I was coming into my own. My body was better. I was feeling more attractive, more feminine. At 30, you think you're going to have a kid. I didn't ever want to have children, even from a young age. But if it would have happened, it might have happened then. But, so it was a real, yeah, 30s was, if I could go back to my 30s, which I wouldn't want to, I might add that, I would not want to. 40s, yes, we'll come on to that. Yeah, it was for me a very driving time. Drive, 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 drive. Keep going. Get shit done. Keep working hard. Work harder. Work hard. Work harder again. Keep going. 16-hour days. I don't know how I did it. I don't know. People always said to me, "You're like a Duracell bunny," and I got one of those too. The bunny girls. I'm like, there was exactly. I say everyone used to have like Hugh Hefner and say, "Are you like one of the bunny girl?" No, no, I'm not. Just for clarification. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, and then yeah. Mhm. Mm. Yeah, so yeah, and you've triggered something in me in a good way, which is, you know what, in that time and moment, and we're talking the 90s here, right? 2000s, right? Early 2000s. And the internet was here. It was, we'd had a massive shift in the way that we work. And I remember somebody asking me, saying, I've never been married, not had children. Um, And I remember distinctively having a discussion saying, is there a choice? Because at this moment in time, you didn't have portfolio careers, you didn't have change, you stayed in your lane, and you knew that if you stepped off of it at that time, if you chose to have a family, you were parking your career and it was career suicide. It was at then, not now, not now. The opportunity you didn't thank God. I mean, but and so distinctively I knew and my breeding was I will not have children because I'm not prepared to lose what I've worked hard for. Selfish, yes. I don't think I've been a great parent, but by the by, thank God, right? 'Cause my siblings have had kids, they've done all that, so that's great. But yeah, I think we had there was a distinct decision. You were a stay-at-home mum or you worked. It was that simple. And if you went to be a stay-at-home mum, you don't know what your place in society will be when it comes to work when you go back. And that to me was too frightening. Too no, no, not at all. Not at all. Funny, isn't it? That's the whole point of going reflecting. And anyone that's listening to this, maybe reflect on going back into your, what's made you you today. I'm very grateful for all of my past. Would I want to go back there? No, not all of it. But I'm very grateful for it because it's led me to where I am today, which is flipping awesome. Anyway, so now we come on to the 40s, the naughty 40s. I don't know why I do that. I don't know why, but I do. So the So the naughty 40s comes along, and so what would you say to your 40-year-old self? Yes, yes. Oh, yes. I think I'd agree with you to the network. Absolutely. So in my thought, I'd already lived in different countries. I traveled a lot. And I think I, at some point in my 40s, had a realization that if I kept doing things so fast, I won't remember things. I did so much that I can't remember exactly when I did it, where I went. And when people say, "Do you remember when?" I would be like, I can't. Um, so I think that I sped through. And as I said at the beginning, I've always been fast. My mum said, ever since a child, I did everything fast. I ate fast. I talked fast. I walked fast. I on steroids fast. And I think that that's always been a bit of a theme in my life, if I'm honest, and it still is. And I like it about myself. I just, I realize that I like that quality. Now, the difference is taking people with you, right? So there's that either I'm a solopreneur and I'm just going to wander through life aimlessly, and then, is everyone around me that I trust, that's loyal, that all those things that I've come to kind of really cherish. There was a realization in my 40s that this is one life. This is it. This is one body, one life. And I had a very, very big spiritual awakening, I guess you might call it. I I lived in New York. I started to explore meditation. I was really into like, how do I understand myself? So the backdrop of this is I had a super bad mental breakdown. And I had to go into the Priory institutionalized. It's not a secret. I had something happen at work and it was just horrendous and it put me into a very bad place. And off the back of that, I had a decision to make, which is, do I continue this path of destruction and probably end up not being on this planet? Or do I do a different choice and become a psychologist to understand how I am, how I work, how I think, how I feel? And that was a pivotal moment. And I think I was probably, this is actually probably late 30s, coming into my, it was a back set into my 40s, because I realized that there was more to life than work, and that like work was a part of my life. It wasn't my life. And that shift had started, but there was a lot of curiosity and exploration in myself, um, from sexuality to like, who am I at work? Who am I not at work? Who am I? Like, that was such a time for me, which was slow down. Like, what do I want to be professionally? Where do I want to go? Why have I wanted to work here? Why is that? And I started that journey. Now, did I get all the answers then? No, they come over time. But it was something really that was a super profound. And I had the it was I worked for Adidas. It changed my life. It was I come into a role which was just um, so illuminating. Okay, and that I was going into that as I got sort of more to my 40s, but it was just such a pivotal time within me. So the inner transformation had started to happen. And that had started to shape my outer world. So it was a very confusing time, a very liberating time. And I loved it. I loved it. I was here for it. And that's when I said, I'm built to transform. I don't care about ambiguity. I don't care about not having all the answers. I like that. I'm a seeker. I'm a curious person. I like to learn. And that's when I discovered my love of academia and research. I was like, I left school at 15 with nothing. Like, how is this possible? And so I'd go back to my 40-year-old self and say, experience, like, and do not worry what an absolute FC UK other people think about you. They've got an opinion. Whatever you're doing, they've got an opinion whether they like it or not. It's normally through jealousy. It's normally through because they'd like to do it, and it's their own insecurities that put you into where you might be, get a little bit of heat because of, don't worry about them. Do what you're doing, but network, accumulate, start building this wonderful network that you need in as you get more in your, because it's more enriching who you work with, not what brand you work for, not kind of like all of that bells and whistles. It's about what type of people am I around every day, all day, and how am I learning from them? How are they learning from me? This was the change that I started to become more team orientated. I started to slow down, paying more attention. I think meditation massively helped me do that. So yeah, it was a real moment for me. And then we are. And then that well, life is amazing, isn't it? And I always say this to people. I've had an extraordinary life. I'm an ordinary girl, ordinary, extraordinary life, and I love it. I've done every. So I had a list. I don't know for another list because I'm also Virgo. Virgos love order and lists. So I for a list, for a list, for a list, for a list. And they started to get less and less. And when I got to 40, there was one particular list. And the list was this: fall in love, build your own home, buy land, build a home, enrich yourself with experiences, go visit places. There was nothing about work on my list. Nothing. I, but only when I look back. So I've got journals. So I've been journaling for 15 years. I've got all these journals. I mean, somebody's going to have a minefield when I'm not here. They want to read my journals. But anyway, maybe they'll become famous. Yes, there it. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, it's absolutely. You're in it with me. You're in it with me, Bridget. Yes, so and so now we approach or we're in our 50s. Like where are you in relation to telling your I'm nearly 52, so I've only got a couple of years in, but I've changed a lot in 2 years. I've changed so phenomenally, more than in my 30s, in 2 years in my 50s. Change in a way which is hard to describe. It's a knowing, it's an assurance that I provide for me, I give my own permission, I validate me, I authorize me, own oxygen mask on before other people. But I want to help other people, but not at the detriment of myself. Yeah, there's a lot of change. What tell me about what you'd kind of like in your 50s now. Oh, happy birthday. Yeah, yeah. So Yes. Yeah. Still. Yes. 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 Amazing. Yes. Yeah. That's lovely. That's beautiful. And there's so much of, I mean, all of that resonates with me, and I think it will for a lot of people. And I think choice, freedom, um, my value structure really hasn't changed, but the meaning behind has, and it's always been around freedom. Freedom to me now looks very different than it did. But I know one thing: I have ambition back, fire in my belly, like I've never had before. I had that in my 30s, but it's very different. It's considered. It's not reckless. It's not it's definitely more. I'm pausing to understand the ramifications of my choices, my decisions, and controlling what I can control, and leaving the rest, not worrying about what things I can or can't do. Um, and if you follow Mel Robbins, she talks about let them. I'm them and let me. Like I don't have time. My become really small now, my friendship circle. I won't tolerate stuff that I used to. And I think that it's not because I'm an unkind person. It's like, if this is not aligned, it's okay. It's not for you and it's not for me. And that comes to clients, it comes to work, that also governs my it's not all about work. There has to be some joy, there has to be fun. But fun again wasn't the same in my 20s, 30s, 40s than it is now. Fun is going out for a walk in the sun and a coffee. Is that the reality? So simplicity, I think, is also something which comes to my mind. And I know that we're at time, so I really want to carry on talking, and I mean that genuinely. And I said that this would happen. So, parting as you in continue this path of what for anybody that's been in your shoes, what would you kind of say is the thing that most people should look forward to at this stage in life? Yeah. Yes. Hell yeah. Yeah. You're right. Wow. And on that note, yes. What a note to leave that on. Bridget, it has been amazing to chat to you. You've given me so much to think about, and I'm sure that you have our listeners. And if you're inspired to connect with Bridget, please do. Description in the bottom. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are growing it. You know, we want real conversations. This is what AI can't do. And I work with AI every day, all day. And this is the one thing that we mustn't get absorbed with not having these real conversations, because to me these are more inspirational. The goosebumps don't come from AI, they come from human connection. So thank you so much being here. Good luck with your move to Norfolk, and you're going to come back, you're going to tell us all about that. Well, thank you so much, and if you're listening, see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye.